Hello everyone and welcome to the TU Automotive, the Future of Infotainment webinar. I'm Ross Jones, I'm a Senior Management here at 3Vision. 3Vision are a specialist content consultancy based in the UK. We help clients launch video services globally, focusing on content rights negotiation and licensing, and we've done so over the last 15 years. We've been helping companies in the automotive space with all things content in the past 2 years as well. So we're joined by some fantastic panelists across a range of companies in the content and automotive industry today in what I think will be a really great discussion. I'd also like to invite the audience to submit their questions during the session, some of which will be asked to the panelists towards the end of the session. So just to set the scene, the content and automotive industries are currently going through some major changes, evolving at great speed. In parallel, consumers' expectations of accessing content in new and exciting ways continues to grow, and we now have the ability to consume content across a huge range of devices. In this panel, we will discuss how content might look in the vehicle in the near future, the challenges and opportunities it presents, and finally, who will lead the way in this unique space of delivering content to vehicles. In the interest of time, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to give a brief introduction on themselves and their company when responding to the first question, if that's okay. Great. Well, let's go to the first question. So, how could the two industries work together? So, Pete, I'll start you here. How are Sony viewing the in-car entertainment space?
Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Pete Wood from Sony Pictures Entertainment. Hopefully you all know who Sony are. I work in the movie studio side of the business and my role is leading new distribution partners opportunities that is really focused on innovation. Automotive is one that we've been looking at for, I'd say part-time for about 5 years, full-time for about 2 years. And we're very excited by that space. Let's go back to the question. Sorry, it just disappeared off my screen. Can you repeat the question, Ross? Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, sure. How are Sony viewing the in-car entertainment space? Are you seeing it as an exciting opportunity?
Yes, yes, and very much. I mean, look, I liken the automotive space to some degree like early mobile video. If you go back 15 years, the idea of watching, long form content or a movie on your cell phone didn't exist, and no one really thought that was going to be a business. And now, as you look at consumption of video, the mobile device overtakes the television as the main form of video consumption last year. When we look at automotive and specifically connective car, I think there's some really unique things about the automotive space that it, to us as a studio, also as the world's largest entertainment company across all mediums, games, music, film and TV. I think it's a really exciting opportunity to sort of understand what you can do in that unique environment, and that's what we're looking at.
Great, thanks, Pete. And Ivan, as a infotainment software company, you're providing services to car manufacturers. From a technical perspective, are we ready for content in vehicles right now?
Thank you, Ross. So hello, everybody. My name is Ivan Dimkovic, and I'm a co-founder of Cinemo. This is a German middleware supplier, and we deal with more than 30 OEMs worldwide. So we're pretty much on all the continents. And we have been in this market since late 2008. And in these 12 years, a lot of things changed. And I would say, Ross, that today we are definitely ready for premium video on demand, live TV in the car. The 5G technologies are coming. The 4G is widely deployed. The power of the embedded infotainment system is enough. Of course, at the same time, the content involved too. So the security requirements of the studios, end-to-end DRM, and of course, the end users are becoming much more demanding. So I think that's the challenging part. But we're building all the components. We have them right now. So I think from a technology side, we are good to go.
Great. Thanks, Ivan. And Lawrence, how exciting is the in-car space for YouTube? Is this another opportunity to expand kind of AVOD and specifically advertisers?
Yeah, thanks, Ross. So I'm Lawrence. I'm a product lead teams that work on YouTube and also YouTube Premium, which is the ad free version of YouTube. It removes ads, it gives you offline. And that includes music, which is a standalone product, YouTube Music, akin to Spotify or other kind of $10 a month type of streaming services. So right now, our big focus in the automotive space has been on bringing the music service into cars, and that is a premium only experience right now. And moving forward, we also would love to have YouTube videos in cars. Right now, we've been seeing, that there is a bit of a limited opportunity in terms of viewership, but we've started to do some work with automakers to have YouTube be available when parked. And we think that autonomy will really open up the space for YouTube. So right now we're focused on YouTube Music and seeing great penetration there with Android Automotive and CarPlay and other integrations. And so we're moving forward. Yeah, do see it as a space where users want to access video content from YouTube and music content from YouTube.
Great, thanks, Lawrence. And Corey, from a Volkswagen perspective, how important is it for Volkswagen to start offering content in vehicles?
Yeah, thanks, Ross, and thanks everyone for joining. Corey Spearman, Content Development Manager for Volkswagen Group of America, and I'm really responsible for the concepting, business partnerships, and launch of features and services to our connected vehicles and to our consumers. So it's very important to us. I think one of the things that Volkswagen is focusing on right now is really reducing the barrier to connectivity, and something that we did that we feel is very innovative in the space end of last year in 2019 was launch Carrier of Choice. So it basically lays the foundation to open up that data pipe and connectivity to the vehicle. So we partnered with Verizon to start. We'll be launching with T-Mobile later in the year, but consumers can very simply pair their vehicle with their existing family or individual data plan. And so foundationally speaking, that will allow Volkswagen customers and us to start bringing this content in that we're talking about today. So we're very excited about that.
Thanks, Corey. And just jumping on the back of that, what factors do you see to be most important in seeing the widespread adoption of content in cars?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to the foundational pieces and having the ecosystem there to make it easy for customers to ingest high quality content. And so that's really where the focus is for us, is making it as easily accessible to a user where they can go from their cellular devices to laptops and into the vehicle. And I think that's something that's been talked about for a long time, but still connecting the dots to the vehicle has been a challenge. And I think not only for Volkswagen, but for the industry, right? So when you look at a data plan that you either purchase via the OEM or separately, having that consolidated into something that you're already seeing makes that a much more seamless and connected process.
And Pete, if I can ask you the same question with respect to factors that you think is most important to Sony in perhaps getting your content in vehicles, what do you consider that to be?
I think it all starts with the consumer, right? So what is it consumers want is where we always try to start and work back from there. The challenge with that is that's a really nice thing to say. It's a lot more difficult to do, and people like Ivan who are helping to try and figure that out. I also think of it from a business standpoint, outside of the complexity of getting it in there. So what is the business model, and what is the reason for granting access, and who's got the value proposition there? And often I start a lot of my conversations with automakers around the idea of do you want to be an access point or an engagement point? And I think I think certainly ubiquitous access of existing services is key and important. Consumers want what they want everywhere, and there's an expectation. Frankly, you know, putting a global service in a car, there's a moment of a consumer going, oh, that's pretty cool, but it's almost expected that it should be there. And it's almost, you know, crazy to think that we haven't really innovation since the DVD player, you know, and we're already talking about flying autonomous vehicles. So for us, it's, you know, what is it consumers want? And then, you know, once you get past that, what is it they want? What are the things that we can do in the car environment that we can't do outside of the car environment? And I think that comes to the point of engagement. And if we can create unique experiences that are delivered in that vehicle that are beyond the expectation of what you might do with a service that exists, you know, out of the car, I think that's where it's an incremental value and you can find some real synergy and commercial opportunity.
Great. Well, then let's move on to talking about what do consumers actually want to watch in the vehicle? What are they asking for? So, Ivan, you, as we discussed, have relationships in place with car OEMs already. What are they asking you for?
Well, from my, let's say, limited sample set of, let's say, a few tens, I think right now mostly it's talking about the end users' subscriptions that they already have, transferring that to the vehicle. However, I also have a couple of data points where they will create some kind of, let's say, an annual package with a data plan, and it is also going to contain the content being bundled in. So, so I think we're going to see both. But I think it's going to depend pretty much on geography and the vehicle level. Like if it's a very, very high end, it might have its own subscription. And if it's some kind of an entry-level mid-range vehicle, maybe they will offer, well, simply to transfer your logins and your credentials. So we're fine with both, actually. Yeah, I can't pick the winners there, but yeah, happy with both.
Well, let's ask the automaker. So, Corey, what are your drivers, what are your customers asking you for? Is it linear channels? Is it an extension of their pay TV services, or do they just want to access, you know, their subscriptions like Netflix and Amazon in a car?
Yeah, great question. And I think some of it's low-hanging fruit too, right? So when you look at streaming music opportunities that are subscriptions that consumers have today, that we've got to find ways to break those barriers down just from linking your accounts together. And I think there's a real opportunity to start there with OEMs to make that linking easier within the vehicle. But then, you know, and we talked about it last week when we met up for a little bit. I think getting back to laying the foundation, we started talking about video content and more immersive content. That's really foundational to autonomous, right? So, you know, right now, certainly if you're a driver, you're not going to be able to access that content from the driver's seat, but you may be able into the rear seats of the vehicle or passengers. So looking at how do we build that to address those needs, but I think it's first making that connection with existing features and content easier than it is today. There's still too many buttons to push and too many fields to enter when you're just trying to link existing accounts.
Yeah.
And as a global company, Corey, that has operations worldwide, are you taking more of a local approach to each individual market with content, or on the contrary, more of a global strategy?
Yeah, that's the connected services space, and I think any OEM counterparts that are on the phone today know that there's a interesting play between global organizations and what we see in the region. I think the U.S., obviously, in North America, at times has progressed faster than some of the other regions, so we tend to take on a little bit more of the work initially, or try and push that work forward. And I think, again, those connected teams probably feel the pain of advancing their interests. But we can also look to China as well, right? They've made some huge leaps in connected vehicles. And so that's, if not parallel, advancing past the US right now. So it's a mix of both, right? You've got a lot of times, especially global organizations like Volkswagen, where hardware and engineering is centered overseas. and then the software and backend systems that actually touch the consumers might be taking the lead here in the region. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it points to some of the challenges as a global organization that we're faced with, getting the two to play together and address the regional needs.
Great, thanks, Corey. And Lawrence, in the content industry, I think we hear the term subscriber fatigue. Lots of services available to subscribe to, and I understand, you are looking to kind of drive subscription to YouTube Premium. Do you think customers will want to pay for an additional service, which may be made available in the car?
Yeah, so I mean, today YouTube's seeing really strong growth of the premium products. One of the fastest growing music services right now, YouTube Music is, and then YouTube Premium, which has the bundle of music, is growing very well. And I think, just back to your previous question as well too, around what do users want. I mean, we're seeing people use YouTube and YouTube Music in cars, bringing their devices into the car. I think what you saw, with the iPad and the television is TVs kind of had to catch up and really, bring content and services to televisions. And then people weren't sitting around watching their iPads necessarily. They still do, kids do, obviously. But I think that's what we see today, is that people are using their own devices, bringing them into cars. I think we don't have great solutions for your entertainment systems yet, so a lot of them use those devices. I think in the front seat, it's gotten better. I mean, Android Auto and CarPlay have helped kind of bridge the mobile phones to the head units. And so we're seeing lots of good usage and upticks there. And with Android Automotive embedded in cars, I think that will open up a kind of new wave of easy account linking, easy ways to use these subscription services, whether it's YouTube or any other ones. And so we believe in consumer choice, and then being able to choose this subscription service or another one and be able to easily access that in the car.
Great, thanks. And Pete, I know on our discussion last week you were talking about a study that Sony looked into with respect to devices, and it seemed to me like bring your own devices was just one component, and people perhaps wanted recent entertainment to be able to watch content through a head unit and on devices. Could you comment on that study?
Yeah, we did a study last year of about 4,000 respondents, and it was really looking at willingness to pay and problems to solve, really, or what were the reasons that consumers would value or pay for content in the vehicle. And some of the things that I think escape us is the sort of, I want it now, I want to press a button and it just works. I think Apple over the years have done a great job of making the experience on their devices seamless connection to services, and to some degree that hasn't really been figured out in the vehicle. And so I think one of the most premium or results that came out of the study was frictionless access. Frictionless access, I want to press one button, it just works. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to have to spend an hour trying to get short codes that link an account that then put me somewhere else, and then I authenticate against an email. I just want access, and actually there's a real value in access. So willingness to pay, what we look at is great examples. Blockbuster Video was a great business 15 years ago, and for about $4 you could rent movies at store, and they had every single movie you could ever want. It was quickly replaced by video on demand, because I can press one button from my sofa for the same price or even more money, and I get access. And so we definitely have seen that solving the issues of make it simple, make it work. We also saw things around control, and there was a part of the study was the opportunity for certain respondents, and we looked at the whole market: new car intenders, new car buyers, family vehicles. We looked at a number of different things, but one of the things that came out was this anecdotal comment at the end of the study from a parent, and said, I just don't want to have to think about anything. And right now, and they gave this example of, they get in the car, the kids have got the phone, it should all be working and perfect, but they've put it in this holder so the kid doesn't play with the phone. And 5 minutes after they're driving down the street, the kid's screaming and complaining. So they then pull the car over, and then they're trying to reach around the seat to get the phone, and then they can't get to the phone, and then they get out of the car at the side of the road and get into the back. Like, that is not a good consumer experience. So before you solve, the sort of like future immersive content types, frictionless access, making it simple, I think there's a real value. And when it came to willingness to pay, that was one of the things that sort of topped everything else, was we will pay for, you know, frictionless access and making it simple. And then as we got sort of deeper into, you know, the experiences and the features, I said control was the other thing, the ability from the CSM to say, stop playing content on my kids' phones, right? I'm trying to get everyone's attention and they're screaming. And so that was another, you know, large thing that came out. And then the final thing, which I thought was really interesting and we spoke about last week, was the belief that bring your own device solved everything. I wish I could see all the people that were on the call, but you know, hopefully virtually you'll be doing this. Like, how many people, hands up, regularly sit and watch their television and also sit and play on their cell phone? Everyone does that. Well, you know, think about that in the car environment. You know, why would you want one screen if you could have 2, 3, 4, or 5, right? And so just because the bring your own device solves a problem today of it's the only way to get content in the vehicle today, you know, having that as an extension of a infotainment system and entertainment system in the car, we think is extremely complementary. I don't think it's one or the other. And then that also resonated in the study that we actually did last year.
And Pete, I will stick with you for the moment. So from a Sony perspective, are you seeing the in-car space as a chance of expanding your licensing business, or actually as a chance to experiment and produce new content that may only ever be watched in cars?
It's both. Look, certainly in its infancy, it's an extension of what we do already, but we have to figure out a way of getting, you know, synergies between the automotive industry, which, you know, there was a question earlier, you know, what the OEMs want, and I say they often want unicorns. You know, they branded experience that is unique to them, that can differentiate, that will drive revenue, you know, that will showcase experiences, that will let them engage with the consumers as we move into a rideshare world. I mean, I want. And anyone's ever dealt with a Hollywood studio, we're at the other end of the spectrum. It's like, well, if you want this, it's $1 billion, right? So I think for us, it's an extension of what we do already day one, and trying to find synergies and business models that actually are complementary to the consumer, are commercially viable for the OEMs. I think we mustn't forget that people need to make money out of digital services, and that sometimes gets forgotten about. It's just an access point. Over time, when we talk about, you know, content time to the destination or content made for the car, I think there is a place for that. I certainly wouldn't be a proponent of, you know, putting $1 billion into original productions for the car right now, unless somebody really wants to, in which case, please call me. But I think right now the jury's out about, you know, content time to your destination. Is that really just a feature of a platform versus a whole new content medium? And I can tell you, we experimented with content made for web in 2010. It didn't work. Trust me. I spent a lot of money trying it. It didn't work because everyone believed you'd never spend more than 5 minutes watching something. So I think there will be a place for it. Where I think there's really a place is, you know, immersive experience. And what I love about the car is a controlled environment where you can really direct the consumer to a story or an experience that you can't do in the open world with an OTT service. And I think that's a really exciting area. The one thing I would say, and I say to all OEMs, if you think that you can wait 10 years and do nothing, and in 10 years, suddenly you're going to be part of that discussion and equation, my guess is you won't be. What we're focused on right now is building strategic partnerships that sort of solve the immediate frictionless access and control problems today, and innovate and test and learn using data over time to figure out what we do next.
Great. Well, let's move on to the next question. Will there be a chance for automakers to license content from Hollywood studios? And luckily, we have a Hollywood studio on the panel today, so Pete's perfectly placed to answer. Or will it be a case of offering, you know, Netflix, Amazon, and existing subscriptions to third-party services? So, you know, Corey, maybe I'll kick this one off with you. Are you having discussions with Hollywood studios? If not, you're welcome to start your conversation with Pete now.
Yeah, no, I think Pete and I need to have drinks after this when it's safe to do so. No, I think we're probably still on the uptick there, right? I mean, last week we talked about, should OEMs be creating their own content? And there was a lot to unpack from what Pete said, and I think he's got some great insights. One of the things, so Volkswagen, with our model year 20 lineup, we're nearing 100% connected vehicles. And so one of the things that means is we can pull real-time data off the vehicles and understand from the infotainment system as well as what the vehicle's doing at that time, what the owners are doing, right? And I think that allows us to make better assessments of the right time and place for content, right? And so that's something we haven't always had. And if we did, across OEMs, it differs the amount of connectivity. But as you start increasing all the different models and trims that are connected, those insights become more available, right? I think, I had a conversation with a good friend a few weeks ago, and we talked about kind of the echo chamber that connected teams live in. One of the things is, for the most part, they're a loss leader, right? So when we talk about subscription fatigue and connected teams being able to stand on their own, we've got to figure out what are the right mixes of content and features and services that can generate revenue, because then that makes conversations, with high quality and high cost content easier when we've got that budget behind us from a connected standpoint to do it, versus going across the pond or engineering and asking for that budget. So that's a first step. And I think Lawrence or Peter Ivan might have mentioned it, talking about bundling some of these services, right? So that's, I think later this year, you'll start to see some exciting things from Volkswagen, where we've got new content that we're going to bundle with the carrier of the choice option, and really see how adoption goes. I mean, if we're able to boost our Wi-Fi and data plan subscriptions, that's a win-win for us. And so, and then we've got to be selective. What is the right time and place that consumers want to access that content? And let's make those decisions based off of real data, not just assumptions from the echo chamber that we live in automotive of what we think the customer wants.
Great. And Ivan, let's talk about the car of the future. From a technical perspective, how do you feel that the car of the future and autonomous driving may affect the type of content that's delivered to vehicles? And maybe from a technical standpoint, is that linear channels? Is that short form content, or is it integrating third-party services like Netflix and Amazon?
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Before I move to that, I would just like to add something to the Pete's comment. I like the term frictionless success. I'm a very big proponent of that, even though I studied as an engineer. But when I was trying to get something for my mother on their iPhone, I realized, well, that's actually very, very hard to do. And I learned to value this. If it only has one button or no buttons, preferably, that's magic. And that's the way I would like it to be as well. So having said that, some OEMs I know are experimenting even with some new technologies like AR/VR. And I've been for a few years in the VR industry. I don't know how they're going to play out business-wise, and I guess we're in a very early stage of that. So all kinds of things can come out of it. But before we even get there, just getting the basics, like a full HD multi-channel content, it's actually hard. And many people don't know that. Like, what is happening, like when you open your Netflix page on the web browser, it sounds super easy, and it looks like that, and it's great. But in the background, there are tons of things happening, like the rights management checks, setting up the right stream, bitrate. Making this working as reliable as in home is a challenge because car is moving, right? And the connection can drop. It can, like you can just go to a tunnel. And by the way, it's a dangerous machinery. If you don't do something properly and annoy the driver, well, all things can happen. In the home, you can just be annoyed. But in the car, you can actually make some pretty good damage. Moving and solving all of this is much harder, I believe. Maybe the CE or TV guys will not agree with me. Maybe a different set of. So we kind of security. I think we solved sharing of the content in multi-screens. We solved, and we are already showing some premium services. And I think what needs to happen is I think everybody needs to work together because, you know, you have the carrier, you have obviously the car manufacturer, the content providers, the content owners. As far as what we can do, we can just make it work as reliable as at home. Even sometimes better if we can preload something, pre-cache in advance. And then, of course, there are many other questions like, okay, if it's a multi-seat car, is it a single device or multiple devices, all kinds of licensing things. But from the technology standpoint, car is more complicated and it has multiple screens. It's a safety critical device. So we can take care of that. And as far as the content is concerned, I'll start with what you have at home and then gradually expand it. And who knows what happens with the autonomous vehicles? Maybe there will be some new format, for sitting, or maybe even interactive. I mean, Peter, I guess you've seen all of these things before, like with the VR, with the 3D. I don't know what's going to pan out, but all of that sounds pretty cool to me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was just going to add, Ivan, like I think you're right. There's lots of people experimenting with AR and VR, and I've been in that business as well. My team runs the innovation studio here at Sony Pictures, and I think, in the future, you are going to have some amazing immersive experiences, right? But, right now, and we've done everything from Spider-Man and VR to Ghostbusters in the last few years, making that a commercially viable, deliverable solution when you can't do basic video, to me, just seems like an overshoot, right? But I do believe that as autonomy comes, to fruition, and we're already seeing semi-autonomous vehicles on the road right now, and subject to legislation or lack of legislation in certain countries, it's no longer going to be about the driver of your life or the vehicle that you want to own. And so when it's not about the driver of your life, it's got to be about the experience of your life. And I think that is where entertainment and content specifically plays a pivotal role. And I always say this, to anyone that wants to listen to me talk, which I can do for hours and hours and hours. If you look at the large media companies in the last, 10, 15 years, whether it's in China, an iQIYI or a Tencent, Alibaba, you look at an Amazon or a Google or an Apple, they all went from really sort of being single product or service driven organizations to now they cluster everything together. What's really interesting, if you study all those companies, the only thing that they all share, the only thing they all do is they all have a focus of entertainment. And that's not by accident, right? They realize that that's continuous engagement with the consumer, points of differentiation, constant access wherever a consumer is, and it allows you to do other things in the background as well. And so I think it's a really interesting space.
And
maybe just
Lawrence,
sorry, go on.
Lawrence,
one more AI. It's a kind of a buzzword for everybody. But I think car is moving around. You have destinations you like to visit, and maybe content discovery. That's something on my mind as well. Like if I'm going and having a commute, actually I might discover something I didn't even know exists. Like, would you like to see? This street is the street where, I don't know, a certain person was born, or an artist or an actor, and then would you like to see a short movie about it? Something like that. And I think this, especially if it becomes autonomous, the vehicle, even the driver will be bored and probably wants to be entertained.
And Lawrence, from a YouTube perspective, and perhaps specifically music, do you think that we're trying to run before we can walk, in respect of we can access, the radio, we can to some degree access music streaming apps, but do we need to see more of a streamlined integration of the likes of YouTube for music consumption?
Well, see, I completely agree with what everyone else has said, that frictionless is the first thing what consumers want and demand. I've been in the space, started at Daimler Chrysler back in 2005, and I've been to TU, I think, ever since then. And I haven't seen it rapidly increasing the like ease of use necessarily of media in cars, and particularly of third parties outside of radio. Radio obviously has stayed the same, but I don't think we've actually been bringing the ease of use of radio to third-party services, or like YouTube Music, Spotify, etc. So I think that is the thing to start with, and that's still, if you want my personal opinion on this, being around here for a long time, it's really a process issue, if you ask me. I think that the television industry is a great example where they did a lot of what the automotive industry did for a while, which is come with custom solutions, instead of kind of rallying around standards that all of the major media providers will support. So updatable systems that you can kind of update more easily. I think that's still a challenge for a lot of automakers, is having the business process to update their car radios or their rear seat entertainment systems. And most of these internet connected services, that's kind of the bare minimum requirement. And until you can have more frequent updates safely for drivers and customers, and bring the latest technologies. I mean, YouTube rolls out a new codec every couple of years that saves data, which the carriers then want to require, to save data on their networks. And I haven't seen any OEMs be able to roll out new codecs to their vehicle now. So those are the foundational steps that need to happen, and that needs to happen first. I think some automakers are doing better with that. If you look at Tesla and how they brought YouTube, it was quite unconventional, but I think they future-proofed their car. They said, we want a fully capable browser, and then now they just open up youtube.com and they can do that in park. It wasn't a sanctioned integration by YouTube, and we had no involvement with them, but it works. And so it's like, once it works technically, then we can come to the table and have a conversation about how can we make that better. And that's when you get to the future stuff that Ivan's alluded to, and I think there's big opportunities in music and in video to do social experiences in the car. People want to be connected in the car and not just have their kid on an iPad in the back type thing. I think that the car can provide that connectivity and provide better screens and hardware if the automakers invest in it and kind of improve some processes.
Thanks, Lawrence.
I think what Lawrence and Peter are saying, Ross, is that these 100-year-old car companies are dinosaurs and we need to move faster. And I totally agree. I think anyone from a connected vehicle team on the call would agree. And just to jump in, with the advent of HTML5 head units, I think we're going to start to see that, right? So we'll be able to deploy web apps that don't have to be built into the vehicle at the time of manufacture. But it's also getting out of the echo chamber of the center stack's not the only access point in the vehicle, right? And a new father to a 13-month-old son, what if we just started, my smartphone knows when I'm taking him to daycare in the morning. So what if we queued up Sesame Street on YouTube, or when he gets a little older, a Spider-Man clip from Sony, and it just worked, like Pete mentioned, the survey and the mom that just wants it to work. Well, I just want it to work too, because my wife does a better job of getting them to daycare. But I think those are some of the things we've got the potential to do. That we can queue up that content, but the entire vehicle needs to talk, and we need to have the ability to get those systems in place much faster. And so that's, we certainly recognize that.
And you referenced that people in cars may download content and take it into the vehicle in their own devices. So Pete, as a studio that licenses content to Netflix, are you happy with people viewing Sony content through Netflix in the car?
Yeah, look, we've got great relationships, across the landscape with pretty much every single streaming service. Our business manager is we license to everyone, and certainly ubiquitous access is part of what we do. That's why you can obtain our stuff on any brand and any manufacturer. We're not just saying it's just about Sony. So we do think that's important. The challenge, and I said it starts with technology, and Lawrence eloquently gave the Tesla example of even once you do the basics, then you can figure out how you can make it better and better. The challenge really has been that because you sort of have operating systems in cars that are made up of components, and component decisions that were made 5 years ago that you're going to suffer from for 10 years to come. Again, it's like early mobile video, different operating systems. When I started doing mobile video and mobile gaming 15 years ago, it was like 200 different operating systems. Everyone was proprietary. And over 15 years, we've moved to standardization. And I think you'll see that, in the car. The challenge is, again, standardization takes a long time to come. And when you go into the car and you think about, downloading or taking Netflix in the car, totally think that should be an option that a consumer can have and will want to do. I think, though, there are lots of challenges with doing that, with data usage, consistency in the service. Like, we again believe when we built digital services that it was just better. Well, I don't know if anyone remembers, early Amazon Prime or instant video. It was download to a PC in 60 hours. It wasn't streaming everything you want all of the time, right? And so there are a lot of barriers and challenges to get there. Where once you solve those things, we should be doing things that are complementary to the environment. So it's not a question of an automaker deciding I'm going to build it all myself and it's going to be unique to me, and I'm not going to enable Netflix or YouTube. I think that's not a great strategy. Equally, the idea that it's just Netflix or YouTube when you want to create unique differentiation in your vehicle, I don't think that's necessarily the right answer either.
Sure, and Lawrence, we're lucky to have a Google company on the call with us today. So as YouTube being a Google company, from my experience of talking to car manufacturers and OEMs, I hear of the caution and the concern perhaps of adopting platforms such as Android Auto and Apple CarPlay with respect of not necessarily controlling the customer relationship and also foregoing data and reporting. So your preference, is it working with car manufacturers that use also Android, or are you open to working with any car manufacturer that may develop their own platform?
Yeah, so I mean, I can take a bunch of hats in this one. There's the being an OEM for a while hat, and it's just it's very costly to develop these systems and maintain them over time. And I don't think anyone's keeping up necessarily with technology trends. Suppliers are doing a great job of bringing new technologies, and OEMs are trying. I think that's where the standardization helps. And so I think that's kind of why Android Automotive and Automotive Embedded came to existence, is because the automakers couldn't align on standards between themselves, or they did, but it was kind of too late, and consumer demand had already gone there. So I think, like Google is here to help provide standards. I think that obviously it makes a great, great like us versus them sort of thing. But I think Google's been trying to really work well with automakers and understanding their needs when it comes to data privacy, and Google itself is moving great strides in data privacy to make sure we're not maintaining users' data for extended period of times, making sure it's clear what data is being there. So I think they're working. I think Google is working together. I'm not on that team. I work very closely with them. I think Google is really trying to support the automakers in creating a standard that will help them bring technologies to the consumers and the technologies they want. Yeah, there are discussions and things that need to happen, and sometimes disagreements, but I think those get worked out. And as you see more and more partners adopting it, that kind of is the proof there. And as the technology adoption accelerates and the consumers are happier with what they're getting, I think that's kind of proof that this is a better direction to go than to do nothing, which then you end up with people bringing in devices or other OEMs that do find solutions that are more standardized moving forward.
Well, Corey, perhaps I can take your view on that. Is it important for you to own the customer relationship and build your own platform, or are you open to working with these sorts of large gorillas in the room, you could speak?
Yeah, I'll just pun on that. No, I'm kidding.
Super easy question.
I didn't say it would be easy.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, that's that can either make people very anxious or very excited within the same OEM and within different departments, right? And kind of going back to a 4, 5, 6 year build cycle of new vehicles, not only from the component but from the software side. So there's competing interests there. I think there needs to be a blend of both. I think that it makes a lot of sense that OEMs need to be open to the fact that technology is sometimes moving faster than them, and look for assistance and support with companies like Google of the world that can provide it. But there is a huge point of needing to have some ownership of, or all ownership of, the data from that vehicle, and creating the brand experience. I think that's what's most important, right? Is because we want to develop brand loyalty for Volkswagen that makes happy customers, encourages them to drive bigger and come back to the brand. And so I think that's where again, those internal conversations differ from department to department on what the right strategy is. But we do know we need to do right by the customer and provide them an experience that they love and they'll tell their friends and family about. So it's not an easy question to answer. I probably haven't.
Well, I appreciate you answering that one, Corey. I know it wasn't an easy one. And Ivan, from your experience of your existing relationships with car manufacturers, are they typically going down the same approach, would you say, building their own platforms and services, or are they taking a more open approach to those large FANG companies, so to speak?
Well, actually, it depends. The answer. So I would say let's say the OEMs which are high end and they have a very well known brand recognition. They as Corey was saying, they want to maintain the brand loyalty of their consumers, and I mean that's great. And there are other types of OEMs like the smaller ones where, for example, I don't know, they don't have resources on R&D power to create something as big as the biggest OEMs can. And in this case, they really rapidly adopt third-party technologies and brands, even though it means losing a little bit of their own brand identity. But for them, I guess they consider adding this as a value add for the car. So we see both. And but for example, there are a couple of very high-end OEMs that really want to keep the branding consistent. They don't want to, let's say, share too much data. And then again, you have a completely different approaches with some others. So it's kind of, it's hard to satisfy everybody. But when it comes to a premium VOD live TV, actually enabling that doesn't really change too much whether the OEM wants to maintain the brand identity or wants to adopt some other technology, because none of them actually today have out-of-the-box solutions that do everything. So still there is this extra step you need to do. Like, for example, I want to stream my premium service today in a car. There will be some certification for DRM. There will be certification for the head unit, obviously the codecs and all kinds of tech that's going. And there is still no one-stop shop solution that will sell you a box that works. So what we are trying to do, and we are only a multimedia company, we try to solve this for the multimedia part. So we can give you that box. But that box is still not doing, obviously, mapping. It's not doing voice recognition. It's not doing all kind of stuff. So, but I think eventually this is going to come. As I think Pete was saying, this is consolidation of the ecosystems. In a couple of years, there will be, I think when I joined automotive in 2007, oh my God, if I just remember all the real-time operating systems and then platforms, I think nowadays it's way less than before. But still, when it comes to hardware, you want to differentiate. You want to have extra displays. You want to have this final touch for the automotive OEM. I think this is not going away anytime soon.
I think you got one thing there just to add to that. I think you can invest in the hardware, like spend money on having nice hardware instead of having, there's a huge software development team required to make a standardized, updatable operating system and multimedia and codecs. So it's, I mean, I do see it very much as a symbiosis of, like, you know, you can let some software companies that are good at doing what they're doing really iterate on the software and then put your money into other things like future-proofing the hardware. And I think ease of use is honestly still the biggest customer satisfaction thing that will keep them coming back to the car. If you look at some of the top car manufacturers in brand and wanting to retain the brand, it's really about, you know, they haven't added, you know, huge amounts of features. They really just made the car simple to use and intuitive.
Thanks, Lawrence. Now, as we move into the last 10 minutes of the panel, I just wanted to remind the audience that there is a chat box functionality for you to ask your questions. So feel free to ask any questions and I'll select some of the best ones. So let's move on to the last question now, which I appreciate is quite broad. Should automakers invest in video content? Corey, let's go with you. I think the answer we know is probably yes, but let's get your feedback on that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think where, you know, OEMs may start off on the right foot is thinking that they know everything there is to know about video development. Pete and I talked about this last week. You know, I think there's a lot of room there for providing the data that we know about our consumers, and we spend a ton of time and money on understanding that demographic. And then working with collaborators and content developers to find, to create that content. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's space for that. I think you've got to be selective from an OEM standpoint in what you do. You take baby steps in that. But yeah, certainly reach out to the people that are doing it the right way and have a huge fan base.
And Pete, your thoughts on that too?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I look at the the question, investing in video content, I think, you straight away go to is, should a car company be making movies? And I think you heard me say, I just don't think that's a great strategy, right? I think the investment in video content is really investment in the entertainment ecosystem. So solving the problems that we know exist, trying to find common ground. I've been seeing probably for the last 3 years, RFPs and RFIs that get sent out that are written by somebody that perhaps once upon a time was procuring DVD players, wanting the solution to the digital over-the-top, world in a very traditional way, and it often goes unanswered. I mean, frankly, I see them, over a dozen that I've seen where, the two businesses are very different. Building cars, you do everything you can to make sure it never comes back and it works every time, because people might die, right? Doing digital services, we've all got used to the idea, well, it doesn't always work day one, it's full of bugs, but we'll fix it in real time, right? So where I always come back to is, I think there absolutely needs to be an investment in entertainment, as a business by OEMs. Over time, once you've built that foundation and you do find those partnerships, it leads into at the edge innovation and experiential content and video content. And maybe there will be, when you've got 200 million connected cars, driving around, the US, you could argue that with the right type of service, it's as valuable as an opportunity as, a Netflix, consumer base, which is also 200 million subscribers right now. So, but you have to start somewhere. So I'm not saying don't spend money. I'm saying just spend it in the right places.
Great, thanks. And let's move on to the second half of the question. So can content be tailored to journey duration? Ivan, from a technical standpoint, how important is that to offer content to customers based on the length of their journey?
I think what Pete was saying, I pretty much agree. So if somebody is to invest a big amount of money into something, I would definitely, okay, not me, but I would invest it into making the car smarter and adapt the content for me. So if I'm going with my daughter somewhere, we're going around some entertainment park, it would be so cool if this thing can actually figure out what we're doing, who is in the car, and show the right content. I think that's something I would much more appreciate than just the application of the content for redundancy's sake. I think it's simply the laws of economics. It cannot work easily because you have so much other content produced by other studios. Unless everybody wants to have the budgets of all the studios combined, I don't see how that could work. But then again, I would very much prefer the car recognizes me and know what I want. So more AI, more adapting and actually some of these things could be done automatically. I just a couple of days ago, I was talking to a very good friend of mine and a colleague in the company, and she had the idea, like, look, is there any way we can detect some parts of the movie and eliminate it because we're just hurrying up somewhere? And she's always saying she's not an engineer. Like, that's kind of, I think, what an engineer would think about, actually. And there are many things like that could be done. And that's not generating content, but making it better and adapted for the person in the car.
Thanks, Ivan. Well, look, as we near the end of this panel discussion, I think a good way to end it would be to ask quite a bold question, perhaps. But let's get all of the panelists' feedback on this question in perhaps a minute or less. So is in-car entertainment here to stay, or is this another 3D moment? Who wants to kick us off?
I think it's here to stay. Yeah, I think it's definitely here to stay. I think, I think audio content has been in the car for eons, so I think audio content for sure. I think we're seeing resurgence of really high quality spoken word content and podcasts, and there's a lot of podcasts on YouTube as well too. And then when it comes to video, I mean, obviously it's more and more consumption of video happening in the world today on digital platforms. So I think that's here to stay. Now, how easy is it to use in your car? I think that's the real question. So that's what I'd love to work together with the industry on.
Yeah, I'll jump in. It's definitely here to stay. I mean, Volkswagen here in the U.S. has spent the last 2 or 3 years building a complete new back end from the ground up to support it. we've established the partnerships with the MNOs to support the data and higher quality content and coming in, and we're open for business. So I share what Lawrence said. We're excited. If you have ideas of good content or features, you can find me, and I'm excited to work with the people on the panel here and everybody else to bring that to Volkswagen owners.
Yeah, I looked at the comparison. I mean, look, 3D was a format, right? And still is a format, and we're seeing new spaces for it. In-car entertainment is a brand new exciting ecosystem, right? It's going to grow and grow and grow, and it will adapt and it will change. And we're sort of, again, experimenting on the edge with, you know, the basic stuff right now. But, you know, how does that roll into, you know, rideshare models? How does that roll into autonomous models? And I mean, I literally feel like I did when I launched in 2005 the world's first movie on a phone, and I remember being at the press conference and there was this sort of, you know, excitement about what that would mean over years, and 15 years later it's now being realized. I kind of feel the same way about the connected car space. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for very different industries to come together to create, you know, very compelling and different experiences.
And Ivan?
I would agree, because I think just the fact that you're being mobile creates an opportunity for completely new usage scenarios. While as like the 3D glasses, you're trying to kind of I apologize for the 3D glasses manufacturers, but you're trying to shoehorn something in a living room where people might not even want that. But art is different. You're moving around regardless of the fact that you own it or you're just renting it. And I think the more the car becomes autonomous, which is where it's going, well, what people usually want to do, they want to be entertained. They want to spend their time, you know, watching something, listening something. So I think it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, it's going to come more and more with new tech, with new content. I'm pretty optimistic.
Well, then let's finish with how long before we all think there will be widespread adoption of content in vehicles. And I guess subjectively, that may depend on what you think widespread is, but let's hear your thoughts.
So it's already there. I mean, look, it's there through bring your own devices, but it's just a matter of time before it's, you know, a more integrated, seamless experience in the car, my opinion.
Thanks, Pete. Lawrence?
I'll continue to try to be contrarian. I think it's until you have like full autonomy in vehicles, I don't think there's value in automakers broad scale, you know, talking cheaper cars worldwide, investing in rear seat entertainment systems, just because the usage, you know, and video well parked, I guess you could say. I think the usage has been like too small and too hard to keep up with people bringing their own devices. For music, though, I mean, that's definitely should be an investment area, and I think that's going to be a big competitive point here about how easily you can access the on-demand service you want, what features are available, these sorts of things. So I'm very bullish on short-term music. Long-term, I'm bullish on video, but autonomy needs to kind of come there first, I think, for widespread adoption.
Thanks, Lawrence. And Corey and Ivan, you have 20 seconds each.
Yeah, I agree with Lawrence. I think the frictionless piece, making the low-hanging fruit like streaming music much more easily accessible, and just the simplest thing of linking an account, we've got to do better at that.
I think we're seeing streaming music already, and the movies. Korea, I was just a few months ago in South Korea, and the 5G is everywhere. And I was pretty much impressed that everywhere you get the high broadband quality, actually better than in the building here. So it depends on the region, but I think in a horizon of 3 to 5 years, it's definitely coming worldwide.
Great, thanks, Ivan. Well, I'd like to thank the panelists for their brilliant input on this panel discussion. Just to let the audience know, there will also be a live roundtable where we'll discuss some similar things that we spoke of today: entertainment and the auto industry, the future of infotainment. We'll also use that roundtable to disclose some survey results that TU Automotive exclusively ran, all around the in-car entertainment space and automotive. So thanks very much to the panelists, and I hope you will enjoy.